Welcome to Honest Money. In today's episode, Warren Ingram answers your questions. Is it a good idea to invest in property? And what considerations should I keep in mind before doing so? Warren also gives advice on how to get a good credit rating, tips on using your credit card responsibly, and what to do if you're in debt and need extra time. Don't forget to subscribe and share if you're enjoying the show.
Hi, good morning, or rather good afternoon, the Honest Money team. So I have a question with regards to investing in property. I'm thinking of buying one or two properties to invest in. Both are situated in the Western Cape, and this will be done through a company called iGrow Investments. Is it a good idea to invest in property? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question about is it a good idea to invest in property? I think it's a very emotive topic for us in South Africa. It's probably one of the biggest debate points I always have with people, whether it be one-on-one or in audiences, because I think we've grown up, as young South Africans of all races and all backgrounds, where our parents have told us, and our grandparents have told us that we must own our own property. And then, there's always that uncle or aunt or cousin or somebody that tells you about how much money they've made out of their property investments. And then we immediately, get that kind of training to tell us that we have to buy a property. And I think it's a tricky one, because for me, when I look at an investment, and I'm not distinguishing between buying a share, an exchange-traded fund, a unit trust, or a residential property, the things that are important to me are how much does it cost me to buy the investment? And I'm not talking about the price of the investment. So I'm not saying, that it's R1 million property versus a R100 share. I'm saying, what are the transaction costs? What is it? What are the fees that I've got to pay lawyers or stockbrokers or financial planners or anybody to actually get into the investment? And for me, that's a percentage calculation. So I want to know, as a percentage of the value of the investment, how much am I paying in costs? How much of the costs are going to be eroding my value of my investment? And that's important, because let's just say you're going to make R1 million investment in a property. If you lose 5% of that, to costs, then that means that your investment's got to generate 5% just to get back to the starting point. Then it's got to generate another 4 or 5% just to beat inflation for the first year. So you need your investment to generate at least 10% in year one, just to be able to stand still in terms of inflation. And I think that those are the things that are important to me when we talk about property. It's not just blindly go into the property because someone says, look, the Western Cape is a growing economy and there's lots of semigration and that's a great idea. Just buy Western Cape property, it's a no-brainer. It's understanding what are the costs, and if these investments are being promoted to you by an investment company, then understand how they're getting paid, and what are the lawyers' fees, what are the agents' fees, what are the bond costs for registering the bond, how much interest are you going to pay? There are a lot of costs with just buying the property. And then I think the second thing is, what are the annual costs of the investment? So when you open a stockbroking account that costs you $50 a month, and then you buy an exchange traded fund, your cost of the investment is the $50 a month. When you buy a residential property, you might be paying homeowners fees or corporate, fees to the corporate body, body corporate. You might be paying some maintenance costs. If you live in a badly run, complex, you might be paying special levies because they forgot to paint the place for the last 10 years. It's all those kinds of things that you need to be aware of. And then finally, remember the costs of selling the investment one day. Are there agents' fees? Are there lawyers' fees? All of those things. So for me, I don't think, especially residential property, is a no-brainer investment. I think if you're going to make a big investment into residential property, you need to know that you've done your homework incredibly well. You need to understand the costs, and don't rely on someone, especially a promoter of an investment, telling you that this thing's going to be a great, deliver a great return. You need to understand, why is it going to be a great return, and try and get some data behind that. There must be real facts as to why the investment will do well, and it's not just because someone feels like it. And that's especially true for times when property has done well for a period of time already. So if we look at the Western Cape, lots of money has gone into the Western Cape over the last 5 years, and especially in 2021 when people left Gauteng and KZN in a mad rush, because of all the looting and riots that we had in July and August. So a lot of money went into the Western Cape. And unfortunately, that's history. That's not going to tell you about the future. There might be opportunities, for example, in certain parts of Gauteng now where the economy might come right, if the municipalities are going to be run better and people are a bit more optimistic about the future, in Gauteng. And the same might apply in KZN. People that have left KZN and have sold their properties in a panic, it might have caused properties in certain parts of KZN to be really cheap, and certainly there might be an opportunity there. The answer is I don't know. I'm not making a prediction, but I can see how different trends will work. So is it a good idea to buy property? And just as a blanket answer, it's definitely not. I think you've got to be really selective, do your homework, and then you've got to understand the concentration risk of the investment. And what I mean by that is, are you prepared? If it's, let's just say you're going to buy an apartment that you're going to rent out and it costs R1 million, would you take R1 million and buy one share? And then would you go and borrow 950,000 Rand from the bank, top it up with 50,000 of your own money to buy that one share? Because that's concentration risk. That's taking a huge bet on one investment in one small company or one big company, it doesn't matter. And when you make a property investment, let's say in the apartment, that's exactly what you're doing. You're buying one property in one city, in one country at the tip of Africa. Might be a great idea, but it's a very concentrated view. And some people would say it's a big bet. And, we don't want to make bets when we make investment decisions. We want to make rational and sensible long-term decisions. So for me, I own my own house. It's something that we're going to live in for probably 10 or 20 years, and then we'll sell it one day. But I don't buy residential properties as investments. If I'm going to buy a property investment, it'll probably be a property unit trust or a property company that's listed on the stock exchange, which owns many different properties. That's very well diversified, and that my transaction costs are very low. But I'm generally just in favor of shares versus properties. I think, buying a global stock market index and a South African stock market index for me is extremely diversified and will probably give a better return than buying an individual property. And for people who think that property prices can't go down, that's simply not true. And then, it's very difficult to sell that property if it's losing value. So it's not just safe as houses, that's not a true statement when it comes to investments. So unfortunately, I'm not a big fan. I think you need to do your homework and be very sure of making the right decision before you make a call on property.
Hi, Warren and crew. My name is Leto Klomache. I just wanted to ask about building up a credit score. So I'll be done in school in about a year's time, and obviously in a couple of years, I'm hoping to be able to get a house or a property. A place to stay, and I've been told that it will be almost impossible to be able to access credit if I do not have a credit score that's good enough. I've been advised as well that some of the best ways to build up this credit would be to take up maybe a credit card or a store card at like a clothing store. Just wanted to find out if you've got practical tips for how one could build a credit score, and specifically in terms of credit cards, if you've got tips as to how one could use a credit card for just the sole purpose of building up credit, because I truly am anxious and don't quite like that. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I love this question about how to get a credit score or credit rating, and especially because you're still at school and you're already thinking so far ahead. I think you're going to be a great success in your financial life if you keep up this kind of forethought and discipline. Well done, and I hope you send us many questions in the months and years ahead, because I'd love to be able to track your journey on honest money, and let's see how we can help you become South Africa's next billionaire. So let's just talk about credit ratings and credit scores. There was a time when I would tell people that, you're crazy. Don't get debt just to get a credit score. It's not worth it. Rather build up cash and go to a bank and then tell them that you've got, a big deposit for your house, and I'm sure they'll give you a debt. But actually, the truth is that the system is a bit rigged by the banks, and they do want to see that you've got a bit of a history of being able to pay off debt and manage debt well before the banks will issue you with debt for something big like a home loan. So unfortunately, you do have to enter the horrible world of debt to be able to actually show them that you've got a discipline in paying off debt and managing debt carefully. So I think, when you start out, the easiest way will be to go and get a clothing account, for example. But be careful here. Don't go and get the maximum amount of debt that the store can offer you. If they offer you 5,000 rands worth of credit and just tell them you want 1,000, or if they're going to offer you the 5, use 1,000. Don't use the whole amount simply because it was given to you. And then do your best to pay off that store card debt as fast as possible, and do that all the time. And ideally, if you can, find a store card that doesn't charge you interest. So some of these stores will say to you that they'll give you 6 months interest free to pay off the debt that you've got. So in my example, if you find one like that and they say to you, we'll give you 6 months interest free on the 1,000 rand. Then, make a plan to pay off that 1,000 rand over 3 months. And my idea would be actually have the 1,000 rand in cash before you apply for the store card debt, so that you can pay off that money already. And then, set aside the 1,000 rand divided by 3, so you get 333 rand, and you pay off the 333 rand every month for 3 months. And then in the last month, you're going to have to pay off a little bit more because, you're going to have to pay 334, I guess, to round up to the 1,000 rand. Then you've paid off the debt and it's interest free. What that does is it shows the provider of the credit that you meet your obligations earlier than required and you meet them in full. And then what you can do is use that store card for a year or two in the same disciplined way to build up a good credit score. If you then start to earn a bit of a salary and you can apply for a credit card at a bank, the same thing applies. The banks will give me massive debt on my credit card. I never allow them to give me the amount of debt that they offer. So I'll say to them, you know what, I only want 20,000 rands worth of debt on my credit card. And then what I do is I actually use that through the month. In other words, I'll start every month with a zero balance. I don't owe them, they don't owe me. And then by the 25th of the month, let's say I've spent 15,000 rand on the credit card, I will then settle that credit card in full. In other words, I take that 15,000 rand, I pay it into the credit card, and then I actually pay off a little bit extra. So I make sure that I actually have a positive balance by the time the month actually ends. Because sometimes the banks have quite complicated formulas with the way that they calculate interest and debt on credit cards. So I always make sure that I overpay into the credit card and that it's more than settled in full. And then I start the month again when it's at zero. I then use the credit from the credit card, get to my 15,000 rand by the 25th, pay it off in full, and start again. And so that's a way that I use credit cards. I make sure that the bank is not charging me any interest and that I'm always paying it off completely every single month. And so I get my bank on my banking profile shows me my credit score, and it's a very good credit score. And it's not because I'm a genius, it's just because I always pay off the debt in full every single month. And I think that that's the trick to getting a good credit score is the banks want to see that you have a consistent history of meeting your debt obligations, always paying them off. And the real trick here is you must never be late with the debt payment, because the moment you're late, that shows them that you're not disciplined. And especially if you're late 2 or 3 times in a year, that really starts to hurt your credit rating. If you get to the unlucky situation where you can't pay off the debt quickly, then the trick is get hold of the debt provider and tell them this. Don't hide away from them. Don't ignore them. Rather engage them and say to them, look, I've got a problem. Can we make a plan? I need to pay off my debt over a slightly longer period of time, but I am going to pay it off. I'm not trying to skip out on my debt. So engage the debt provider as early and as quickly as possible to make sure that they know that you want to pay it off, that you are serious about it. And that will help that limit the damage to your credit score. But if you want to have a great credit score, pay off all the debt all the time, slightly ahead of schedule every single month of every single year, and that's the key to getting a great credit score. Thank you for listening to Honest Money. If you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me on Twitter. My handle is @Warren Ingram. Don't forget to subscribe. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Chat soon.